Hi, everybody. Welcome to Fantasy Huddle. I'm Randy Shaver along with Kevin Gorg. We are near the end of the NFL season and certainly near the end of the fantasy football season. So it's a big week for a lot of teams and a lot of players who are hoping to make their playoffs coming up, I suppose, in the next week or so. This is the last week of my regular season, Kevin, for season long. How about you? Is this the last week for you too?
It's the first week of the playoffs. And, in a lot of leagues, they take out week 18. And then in guillotine, you're down to the final four. So it basically, everybody that's left is getting paid, but now you figure out who's going to win that championship belt. So these are really important weeks. And I think the schedule's fantastic. I think there's some really intriguing matchups this week for playoffs or final game of the regular season to qualify.
Well, this show is brought to you by Aquarius Home Services. Also, 10K Construction, Minnesota Masonic Charities, and Lexus of Maplewood and Wayzata. We'll also be announcing our Vikings ticket winner a little bit later in the show. After 4 weeks of code words, we now have a winner, and we'll get to that in just a minute. Let's talk about injuries, because the big story this week is Phillip Rivers going to be playing quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts after Daniel Jones, and I feel so bad for Daniel Jones. An Achilles injury, he's lost for the season. That's the big news. Thoughts on that? And then is there any other injury news that you find interesting before we get started?
Well, I'm just fascinated by, like everybody else, 44-year-old quarterback, hasn't played since the pandemic. And, I own a bunch of shares of Tyler Warren, that brilliant tight end, who I think now there are some question marks. Jonathan Taylor has been one of the highest scoring players in fantasy. Now there are some question marks. Put it in perspective, the Colts would have been probably a 3 or 4 point dog this week at Seattle if Jones was healthy. They're a 13.5 point underdog. So for all of us that play fantasy, there are ripple effects here that I think you have to take very seriously. The other intriguing story that's kind of way under the radar is Mike Evans is actually on time and ready to try to return this week for Tampa Bay. Think about the ripple effects there with Egbuka, Godwin, who's kind of become a thing the last couple of weeks. So these are veteran players that are going to have huge, huge impacts on the players around them for both their teams.
And also for Tampa's playoff position too. I mean, this is a huge end of the season for them if they can get Mike Evans back, and for the Colts too, because it'd be different if this was week 17 of the NFL season, right? If there was only one game left before they had to make the playoffs. There's actually 4 games left. And so for Phillip Rivers, this is a very important month for both him and for the Colts to try to survive. They're sitting at 8-5 right now, trying to survive to make the postseason. So you're right. There's a lot of great storylines as we head down the stretch of fantasy football this year. All right, we're gonna start with the Thursday night game. It's Atlanta at Tampa Bay, and Kevin's got that game for us.
Yeah, I'll start with Atlanta. They're a 4.5 point underdog. The over-under is around 44.5. So they're expecting some points here on Thursday night. Kirk Cousins, if you're in the playoffs or on the verge of making the playoffs and you've got Cousins starting, I got to tip my hat. You must have one hell of a supporting cast. You're not going to start him. You're just not. I'm sorry.
Right.
I watched that game last week. It was so bad against Seattle. I mean, it was Kirk Cousins in his prime was a really good quarterback. It's no longer the case. I'm sorry. You can't start him. You got to find somebody else. Shadur Sanders is a better option. Let's go there. Bijan Robinson still, I think, a solid start, not a spectacular start. The last couple of years, Tampa Bay has been really hard in terms of fantasy production for running backs. They just don't allow a lot. And with Cousins not really being a threat, I worry about how much Bijan can be a factor in this football game. Kyle Pitts is becoming the one guy in the passing game you can trust with Drake London hurt. Pitts continues to get peppered.
He's really their only guy at this point, right?
Which is so depressing. I mean,
I know.
This Atlanta team, it's a hot mess. So, yeah, for me, it's Bijan and Pitts, and that's it. On the other side, there's a lot of muddy waters to sift through, but Baker Mayfield, even though he's not healthy, is a start. They're going to have to throw the football. And now he might have one of his favorite weapons in the red zone back. Bucky Irving, I think of the running backs, he's the top guy. Unfortunately, White and Tucker continue to carve into his production, so I don't love that. Egbuka, Godwin, both have seen their production, Egbuka especially, in the last month go the wrong way. The rookie's kind of hit the wall there, but he's still such a talented guy. Godwin, if Evans doesn't go, I think Godwin's a sneaky start. If Evans goes, then all bets are off. So I think you really, on the Tampa side, have to pay close attention tomorrow to who's active and how that lineup looks. But the safe ones for me are Baker and Bucky. I think Tampa gets right here, Randy. I think it's a huge game, as you mentioned, for the Buccaneers. I think they win this game by more than the 4.5. I think they're going to win by double digits.
All right, let's move on to the Sunday games. Cleveland at Chicago. The number's 40.5. The Bears are 7-point favorites, at least right now. As Kevin mentioned, Shedeur Sanders, I just have to chuckle. And I agreed with you totally last week in that Cleveland game that
unbelievable.
Judkins was the only guy that I would choose. And then Sanders goes out and scores 33 fantasy points.
I could not believe what I was watching. That game absolutely blew up. And it was the one game on the fantasy board where you said, oh, God. I mean, I'll be lucky to find a player. It just goes to show you got to let them play the games. But, I mean, I don't think anyone saw it coming.
I actually played Shedeur Sanders in daily last week, last Sunday in about probably a quarter of my lineups. And I hooked him up with Fannin, which actually turned out to be a fabulous. So I actually made some money last week thanks to deciding to play Shedeur. 354 yards passing, 3 touchdowns in that game. Even though they lost the game to Tennessee, Sanders was amazing. He's going to have an interesting battle, I think, against the Bears defense. Obviously, in Chicago, the Bears got so much riding on everything. It's such a monster game for Chicago. So I think the sledding will be a lot tougher for Sanders and company. You certainly can play Judkins, bottled up by Tennessee, which I'm shocked by. But Fannin was the guy, 11 targets, 8 catches. He's really turning out to be a fantastic tight end in Cleveland, way better than the other guy that they have there that Kevin loves. The Bears, like I said, will present some problems. But the number to me is just too low. I mean, 40.5 with so many other games in the main slate, at least for daily, there's really not a lot to love here. The Bears, there's pieces, but they're going up against the Cleveland defense, which is pretty solid, even though they gave up 184 yards rushing to Tennessee last week, including Pollard, who went nuts. I mean, this is what you got to love about NFL football, because you just really honestly never know. So if that's the case, if Cleveland can be gashed like that on the ground, then I think Swift and Monangai, you've got to consider those guys, even though they kind of, take away from each other. Caleb Williams, sure. Burden, Loveland, sure. But there's really just not a lot here that I love. If I have them in season long, and I do have some of these guys, I'm going to play them, because you got to play them at this point in the season. You can't outsmart yourself. This is the last week of my regular season in all the leagues I'm in, so I can't outsmart myself. Just play the best players. And so having said that, there's really not a lot to love in this Cleveland-Chicago game. But from terms of NFL football, what a monster game for Chicago after what they did after losing to Green Bay and needing this game this week. The Chargers are at Kansas City. It's a noon start on Sunday. The number, that's for me. Let me go to yours first. Baltimore-Cincinnati is Kevin's game. It's a noon start on Sunday.
Yeah, kind of a fun matchup here. We just saw this matchup on Thanksgiving.
Yes.
If you go back to that holiday, maybe you had your Thanksgiving dinner early, like around 1 o'clock. You had your nap, you watched the afternoon games, and then you got back into that Barca Lounger for some evening football. And this was like leftovers galore, like all the good stuff, right? The turkey sandwich, the mashed potatoes, the gravy. It had everything. And this matchup, again, I think will deliver. If you're in a pinch here for fantasy, or if you're looking to play daily, one of my favorite games here, Randy. Over-under is 53 right now. Totally. Baltimore, a 1.5-point favorite. So Vegas really doesn't have any idea who's going to win, but they do know there's going to be points. Lamar Jackson, a get-right spot against a horrible defense here. If he can't do it now, after 4 straight duds, maybe he can't do it anymore this year.
And they're desperate, too, because that loss to the Steelers really puts them behind the 8 ball here.
Oh, it's a must-win for Baltimore, and they're going to play their studs. Derrick Henry being one of them. So expect a big dose of Derrick Henry in this football game against the Cincinnati defense that's been getting carved up both on the ground and through the air. Last week at Buffalo, Cook went crazy. Josh Allen went crazy on the ground. So but I think Lamar and Derrick are really going to have nice games for you here on the Baltimore side. The one pass catcher you want is Zay Flowers. And I know we've talked to our big fans here at the Fantasy Huddle all year about finding tight ends to play against Cincinnati. So if you're looking for a weird, kind of a daily dart throw, either one of these guys, Likely or Andrews, could just go off because since he can't stop the tight end, the problem is in season long, and if you're in the playoffs, is starting either one, you don't know which guy it's going to be. But both those guys have a chance to score a touchdown in a game where there's going to be a ton of points. On the Cincy side, I think Joe Burrow should feast on a secondary that's been very giving all year long. Chase Brown is having a brilliant finish to the season after kind of a slow first half. Chase is getting it going. He was awesome last week in Buffalo. Jamar Chase, absolutely must start. Keep an eye on T. Higgins. Yep. Another concussion. I think he's doubtful. And so what that does is it probably puts Jamar Chase in a situation where he's getting doubled and tripled, and then you've got the Oshiva guy that maybe you could sneak him into a daily lineup, but in season long, you're going to probably want to steer clear. In a game where there's going to be a ton of points, focus on the mainstays, the quarterbacks and the running backs and the go-to receivers. I think we'll feast.
All right. Now we'll get to the Chargers and Kansas City. It's my game on noon on Sunday. The number is 44.5. KC is a early favorite, about 5.5, 5 points. Of course, the Chargers coming off that overtime Monday night win over Philadelphia, who just seems to be going backwards fast. They've lost 3 in a row. Justin Herbert turned out to be the leading rusher for the Chargers in that game with 66 yards. So even though Omarion Hampton came back, had a nice game, 13 carries and 56 yards, they kind of split the backfield with Vidal. He had 44 yards. So there's players here to pick and choose from the Chargers side. I don't really like this game. I think this game is going to be more of a defensive-minded game. I don't see this thing as a shootout between these two teams. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but if I was looking at the Chargers side, I guess Herbert would be somebody that I'd be interested in. The only problem is I don't know who to stack him with because there is no receiver on the Chargers side right now that is standing out as being the guy. And so that makes it super difficult. And I don't think Herbert is the kind of player like a Josh Allen you play naked because he doesn't have the running ability, even though we saw him lead them in rushing with 66. So the Chargers side, I'm going to kind of back off on. The Chiefs side is interesting because they're cooked now at 6-7. It's a monster division game. If they have any hope of surviving and possibly getting in, they have to win this game. This feels like Mahomes' last stand this week in this game. And so I like Mahomes in this game with Kelsey and Rice. If I were to stack them, I think I would stack the KC side because they are so desperate to win this football game. And I think there's a lot of pride at stake for Kansas City in this game too. They've been embarrassed this year. It has not turned out to be the year that they thought it would be. So this feels like the last stand for Kansas City in a lot of ways. So I do like the KC side a little bit. I do like Mahomes this week. I think the Chargers are coming off a short week. Playing on Monday night, winning a big game. I mean, Harbaugh went off and said the game was like his birth of his children and everything else. Just felt like it was like the most important game of the world for the Chargers. So, you can play Mahomes, you can play Kelsey, you can play Rice. Kareem Hunt is still that guy right now, even though Pacheco is playing. The game itself is muddled. There's just really nothing that super stands out. But if I'm playing this as a one-off game, then I kind of like the Kansas City side a little bit more than I do the Chargers side. All right, let's move on. Kevin's got a really good football game, great game. Buffalo, New England, a noon game on Sunday.
Yeah, might be the game of the week, right? This is kind of the two quarterbacks, the reigning kind of like AFC monster that Josh Allen has been and always in the conversation for MVP. And here comes the new kid on the block in the MVP conversation, Drake May. Been brilliant all year. The over-under is 50.5. Buffalo is a small 1-point favorite. This has all the makings of a classic. Always keep an eye on the weather, which I'll update on Friday for you, which we always do with injuries and weather. And certainly this time of year in New England, that's got to be at least considering. But, Josh Allen is just, once again, showing why he is that MVP candidate every year. His performance against Cincinnati last week was sublime. He can do it all, and he doesn't have really a ton of help, and he just finds way to put up these huge games. So there's no question we're going to start him. We're going to try to find him in daily as much as we can. James Cook, tough matchup, really good running back. They're going to have to really earn their yards against New England on the ground. So I think, 75 yards might be the ceiling. You maybe get a touchdown out of him. Not somebody I'm going to use in daily, but if you have him in season long, like Randy says, you trust your go-to guys and know that they're going to try to get it done. He might be okay in the passing game. You can throw a little bit with the running backs against this Patriots outfit. Khalil Shakir is the receiver that if you're going to handcuff Josh to one of his wideouts, that's the likely guy you're going to use. I like Dalton Kincaid, though. Even though Knox got some run last week, Dalton Kincaid was off an injury. Those reps are going to help him be more ready. So in some of my lineups, which I'm starting to build, absolutely the Kincaid, Josh Allen link up will be a factor for me. I think Dalton Kincaid's in a very good spot. Drake May on the other side must start. He does it all. He's fabulous. Don't overthink it. The running back situation, you've got Stevenson, you've got Henderson. I think you want Henderson of the two, but it's still one of those situations that's frustrating because they kind of dig into each other. Speaking of digging, we're going to go with Stephon Diggs. He's the go-to receiver for Drake May. He's a former Buffalo Bill. They're going to try to feed him when it counts in the red zone. So I like Diggs this week an awful lot against the Buffalo secondary that can be had. And I think Hunter Henry, another tight end to look for in daily and season long. You're loving the production this guy is giving you, and I think he's got great chemistry with Drake May. So start him as well in a game that I think is going to be down to the wire, close game, high 20s, maybe low 30s. Sign me up for as many of these players as I can get into my lineup.
All right, let's move on to Washington against the Giants. It's a noon start on Sunday, and to be quite honest with you, I'm baffled by the number. It's 47.5 in this game. Washington is currently like a 1.5, a 1-point favorite. On the Commanders side, I mean, with Jaden Daniels hurt again and likely not playing, Mariota just does nothing for me. I know the Giants' defense is bad, but I just can't trust any of that. The number is so high, and to me, and you handicap games way more than I do, I just see this game as a 20-17 kind of a low-scoring game because neither team lights the world on fire. Yeah, Jackson Dart's good, and he's got a lot of potential, and there's some, the Commanders are so bad defensively on the other side. I could see the Giants winning this football game for sure. I don't understand how Washington's a 1.5 favorite in this game. So
me too.
It's just kind of a myriad of mess here. There's no running backs in the Commanders that you can trust or you can like. Deebo Samuel's there. McLaurin, if he comes back and plays. Ertz is out. He's done. It's just a mess on the Washington side. The Giants side isn't much better. The fact that Jackson Dart is playing, I think, obviously he can run the football. He can you can play him naked and probably feel pretty comfortable in this game. And certainly stacking with Robinson, Wan'Dale Robinson, who's having a marvelous season. Without, with the injuries that they've had at the receiver position. Singletary seems to be their guy in the red zone. So again, if you've got him in season long, I think you got to, if you don't have a better choice, you got to play him because he has proven that he will get the ball in that position. But overall in this game, and maybe you have a different feeling about this one. Number one, I'm confused by why the number is so high. I know both defenses are not very good, but neither are the offenses, especially Washington. So there's just not a lot that I feel good about in this game. I like the Giants to win. I think it's a 20-17, 24-17 kind of game, which is well below the number. And for fantasy purposes, I just think there's a lot more interesting and better matchups for daily than to try to pick and choose something from a game, even though that number is 47.5. You tell me, is there something in
I
that
agree.
game that you?
I use the Giants in my pick pool. I don't know why they're not a 3 or 4 point favorite. I think the Giants will get the money. I think Jackson Dart's the only player I could use on either team. I thought Washington last week looked so bad. And
so
listen,
bad.
No disrespect to the Vikings, but I mean, they didn't do anything in that game. So that's a red flag for me. I think they've packed it in. They went to the NFC Championship last year. Yep. They've had a ton of injuries. They look like a team that's just trying to get to the wire to me.
Yep. And they're on the road in New York. And so I just don't see this as a game that's going to produce a lot of points. Kevin's got Vegas against Philadelphia. Is this the spot where the Eagles finally get right? Noon Sunday game.
This is the spot where the defending world champions put their foot in the ground, and this is the perfect team to be playing. The over-under is only 38.5. So listen,
brutal.
Philadelphia's a 12.5 point favorite. So Vegas is telling you to avoid
Vegas is telling you about Vegas right now.
Yeah, they're saying, listen, we know these guys as well as anybody. They play right outside our casinos, and their dog.
Yeah, we see them all the time. This is bad.
So I'm not even going to get into the Geno Smith or Kenny Pickett thing, because if you're playing real fantasy in December and you utter the words Kenny Pickett or Geno Smith into your lineup, you might as well just take a white flag and wave it, because it's over. If you got no chance. I feel so bad for Genty and Bowers, because these guys are elite, young, superstar, talented players, and they're surrounded by a bunch of clowns. And so Genty or Bowers, if you got them in season long, you got to plug your nose and hope. But my God, it's a tough matchup.
Kevin, I saw a statistic this week where Gainwell has more fantasy points than Genty. Gainwell for Pittsburgh has more fantasy points than Genty this year.
It's really sad. I mean, it's really because
crazy.
You know the kid's good. Like,
right.
You watch
and they
the
put
kid,
like a 6th round draft choice or whatever they spent on him. It's just like, oh my gosh.
So again, in daily, I'm avoiding all Raiders. I'm not touching the Raiders in this matchup. In season long, I've got Brock Bowers in one of my leagues. He'll start.
Yeah.
I've got Genty in another. I don't know if he'll start. But bottom line is, nobody else matters. On the Philly side, the game script probably isn't going to give you a ton of production for these guys, but they're going to be safe. Jalen Hurts is going to get you a couple of touchdowns. I think Saquon Barkley is going to score. A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith are both nice candidates for a touchdown. Goddard as well, but no one's going to blow up in this game because it's got like 27-3 written all over it. So, yeah, you're going to start your Eagles, but in daily fantasy, these are the decisions you have to make. And I like to look for games like Buffalo and New England, Baltimore and Cincy, and some other games, because to me, Philadelphia's going to be ahead, so they're not going to be in any hurry. They already have a slow, methodical approach to how they run their offense. So, yeah, they're going to win the game 27-3, but I don't see any player completely blowing up in this matchup, outside of maybe Hurts, who I think it's a get-right spot for him. So I love Philly. I think they're going to kill them and avoid all Raiders is what I'm saying right now.
The Dallas Cowboys are going to watch this game with so much interest, because if Vegas could pull off the incredible upset,
goodness.
The Cowboys have the Vikings on Sunday night, and that's going to make it even a bigger game. All right, the Jets at Jacksonville. It's a noon start. The number's 43.5. The Jacksonville Jags are 9.5 point favorites. We start on the Jets side. Brady Cook made his NFL debut as a quarterback for the Jets because Tyrod Taylor got hurt. It was awful. The Jets are so bad, and there's just not a lot of hope here. There's nobody on the Jets side that I would even contemplate starting. I know Breece Hall is there. I know they've got some other. There's nobody there. Jacksonville is on a mission right now. They can feel it. They can see it. They're playing so much better right now. So from the Jets side, especially if Brady Cook starts, I'm not touching anything. And I'm actually surprised that the number's 43.5, because it feels like a Jacksonville 28-0 kind of a win in this game on Sunday. On the Jags side, Brian Thomas alert. He had 3 catches for 87 yards. Maybe he's alive. If that's the case, that makes the Jags even even a better offense and more dangerous if they can somehow find a way to work him in, because Jacoby Myers has been really good. 10 targets, he had 4 catches and a touchdown. There seems to be chemistry between him and Trevor Lawrence. So that's a good sign for the Jags. ETN's been a beast. He had 2 touchdowns last week, 20 carries, 74 yards. It's not a split backfield with Tootin anymore, or at least doesn't feel that way. I love ETN this week in this game against the Jets a lot. The Jets gave up 239 yards rushing against Miami last week, and a lot of it was to Jalen, what's his name? I mean,
Jalen Wright.
Jalen Wright. I mean, come on. So this feels like a Jags blowout to me. The Jets know that they're cooked, and actually the best thing for the Jets right now is to probably lose out and try to get a high draft pick and restart, even though they've had some moments this year where it looked like Aaron Glenn was getting things turned around. It's just a mess right now. So I love the Jags side. Trevor Lawrence, I don't love. I don't love him as a quarterback at all, but I can see playing him with Jacoby Myers, playing him with, I'm afraid to say it, Brian Thomas, possibly. Brenton Strange was kind of quiet last week, but he's sitting there too. But I love ETN. I love this matchup for Jacksonville on the ground. And I think it's going to be one of those games where they're going to be ahead and they're just going to run the clock and they're going to run their offense and not have to throw the ball as much as maybe they would if it was going to be a more high-scoring game against an opponent that has something to play for. The Jets really don't have anything to play for. So if you're playing the Jags this week, lock in ETN because I think he's going to be the player that you're going to want in this game. Last noon game on Sunday is Arizona at Houston. What a big game for Houston that's making a move.
Yeah, Houston, 9.5-point favorite. Over-under is 42.5, and I got to tip my hat once again to Michael Wilson, the gift that just keeps on giving to all of us in daily fantasy. I had a lineup with Stafford and Puka, and I ran Wilson back on the other side.
Good for you.
Cash for a few hundred. And in watching the game, Michael Wilson is just unbelievably gifted in the red zone. He made a couple of catches, including the last touchdown in garbage time, that got me over the hump. I love this kid.
Makes you wonder, why in the world didn't they play the guy more? He just is
bizarre. It's typical Arizona Cardinal football. They can't get out of their own way. Honestly, you're right, Randy. This guy's been stashed away most of the season. And I get it. Marvin Harrison's a good player, but you want to have a guy that can actually play off him, an Addison to a Jefferson, which this year's a bad example, but you know what I'm trying to talk about. Yeah. We'll get to that game. Brissett, even though NFL quarterbacks around him are better in fantasy, not many are. When the guy throws the ball between 45 and 55 times a week, there's going to be production. Even though Houston's defense is elite, I still think Brissett's a good start because they're going to be in chase mode and he's got weapons. And so I'm going to use him. I'm going to say no to Bam Knight. I think it's a really tough team to run against. I don't like the running game for Arizona. I think they're going to be in chase mode, as I mentioned. Michael Wilson, yes. If Marvin Harrison comes back and they're leaning that way, yes. Trey McBride, the best tight end in football, yes. Chase mode, I don't care. Again, in fantasy, you got to take yourself out of the realm of who you think's going to win. You got to look at the game script. And Arizona, like last week, is going to be chasing from behind, which is going to give you opportunity in fantasy, and opportunity is the name of the game. On the Houston side, keep an eye on that script because now, even though C.J. Stroud is a wonderful quarterback, if they're up 14-0 late in the first quarter, now they're going to start to run. The guy that I love in this matchup, and I'm going to hammer this guy in daily this week, is Woody Marks. He's minus 160 right now in the betting markets to score a touchdown. He's getting a ton of usage, and they're going to be playing from in front. And to further amplify what he might be able to do, Nick Chubb is now banged up and is a question mark for this game. Woody Marks in a great smash spot. Nico Collins, stud receiver. Don't overthink it. He will get his, including a touchdown this week. Now, the dart throws come down to guys like Higgins and Dalton Schultz, who with the game script aren't going to be used quite as much. So I'm focusing on Woody Marks And if I want any part of that passing game, it's Nico Collins. Houston wins by double digits. I'll call for a 31-17 final. I think there'll be some points in this game, Randy. Today, I want to talk a little bit about the Minnesota Masonic Charities. When you think about the Masons, I get it. You think about the funny hats, those pancake breakfasts, which are phenomenal. My dear friend John Schweitz and I have chatted about this, and it's so much more than that. They've got the Masonic home over in Bloomington. They've got the hospital for the children over at the U of M. They are the largest fraternal organization in terms of charitable needs in our country, and they deserve a ton of recognition. So thank you, Minnesota Masonic Charities, for all you do and for supporting us over here at Talk North, and a special thanks to my good friend, John Schweitz.
10K Construction is your one-stop for all your general contracting needs, whether interior, exterior, residential, commercial, or multifamily properties. They build relationships with their clients, and that's how they've grown their business through referrals. Plus, they are teaming up with LP SmartSide to become Minnesota's premier siding installer. And they're also partnering with IKO Shingles as well. They've got the best of the best to do the job right. 10K Construction covers both Minnesota and Wisconsin. Now, the rumor is they charge a little extra because it's Packer land. I'm not sure about that, but what I am sure about, 10K Construction is the company you want handling all of your general contracting needs. Go to 10kconstruction.com for details.
Yes, it is Lexus December to Remember time. It's here. It is the very best time of year to purchase a new Lexus, and it's not even close. And keep in mind, it doesn't matter which side of the town you're on, because they have locations in Wayzata and Maplewood. Too many incentives to even list right now. So there's a reason why they call it a December to Remember. It's a great time to go see Charlie Swanson or his great staff. December to Remember ends, you guessed it, at the end of December. So see the inventory at Lexus of Wayzata or lexusofmaplewood.com.
All right, let's move to the 3:00 games. Green Bay at Denver. What a monster matchup this week. The number is 42.5. The Packers are the early favorite. How is that even possible in Denver?
It doesn't make sense. Does
it
not
doesn't
make sense. But I'll say this, Green Bay gets a ton of action in all betting markets. They're like the Cowboys. Their lines are a little bit amplified in their direction every week. You got to keep that in mind. I think it should be a pick'em game. I do. They're
think
both
it's a
good
pick'em
teams.
game. Yeah, I agree. On the Packers side, Jordan Love versus the Denver defense. It's a really tough matchup for any quarterback, including Love. His wide receivers, however, are healthy. He's got choices now. It's not just one or two guys because the other two or three are on the shelf. They're all back. They're all playing. Some are a little bit banged up, but they're all playing. And Watson has been fantastic for them the last few weeks. So if you stack this game, if you look at this game and you think Love is going to, have a decent game, then Watson would be the guy that you would stack him with. Jacobs running the football, it's going to be tough sledding. It really is against this Denver defense. So I don't really like a lot on the Green Bay side. If you have them in season long, you got to play them because they're just your best players. But if I'm looking at this game for daily, I don't know, because the defenses on both sides are so good that it makes it hard to trust certain players because of that fact. But on the Green Bay side, there are choices with Jacobs and Jordan Love and certainly Watson. On the Denver side, RJ Harvey, man, 23 touches last week, including 6 catches and a touchdown. We were both on that last week, and it turned out to be a good choice. Tough sledding for the running backs for Denver against Green Bay for sure. That includes Bo Nix against this Denver defense and running the football. I don't really like Bo Nix very much in this game, but I do prefer him more at home than I would at Lambeau. But I think it's going to be a very tight, close-knit football game between these two teams. I don't see a blowout or a run and shoot kind of a game here. I think it's going to be a more slugfest kind of a football game. Last week, Sutton had 10 targets. He had 6 catches. That's a good sign for Denver fans because they want Cortland Sutton to be that guy. But again, to me, this feels like a low-scoring football game. And you know Denver way better than I do, but it just feels like a 20-14, 17-14 kind of a football game in December with so much on the line. There's not a lot to love for daily fantasy in this game for me. Season long for sure if I've got those players. But you weigh in. You tell me, because you know Denver better than I do. I just don't. I just don't see anybody standing out in this game.
It's not a game I'm going to focus on as well, Randy, because if you watch Sean Payton in these big games, and I go back maybe 3-4 weeks ago, similar game. Kansas City came to town. It was a pick'em type of game, and Denver really tried the ball control game to take the ball away from Patrick Mahomes. I look at Jordan Love as a very similar quarterback, and I don't think Sean Payton and the Broncos want to go out there and trade punches with a guy like Jordan Love. They don't want to try to win this game 31-28.
I don't think that's Denver's game either.
It's not. They win with defense and ball control. So they're going to use Cortland Sutton for sure. They're going to use R.J. Harvey, but they're going to try to do it 5, 6, 7 yards at a time. This is going to be a ball control game for the Broncos, and if they can stay in front, I'm with you. It has 20-17, 17-14 written all over it. And then you have to factor in Denver weather. Yeah, I'm with you. This is an underplay for me, and I'm going to try not to use a bunch of these players in my daily fantasy.
If you play defenses, it's a good game to pick a defense, because I think both defenses will have success in this football game. All right. But here's like the opposite. Detroit at the Rams, 3:25 on Sunday. What a great football matchup for a desperate Detroit team. And for the Rams team that's in this wild west in the NFC, that every game now is so critical.
Yeah, isn't it funny how things change as the seasons change? The Rams have gone from being a playoff contender to right now one of the Super Bowl favorites in all the betting markets, and they've played like it. I mean, they look fantastic. And here's another big test, 5.5 and 55.5.
Woo! Let's go.
This is a bonanza of fun. So Jared Goff, yes, please. Game script likely going to force him to throw the ball. Love Goff in this spot. Jahmyr Gibbs is a no-brainer. He's a cheat code in fantasy. Fire him up. Montgomery's a dart throw. I don't love the game script, but Montgomery's a guy that they will push into the red zone if they need to score points in small spaces. Amon-Ra St. Brown came back and looked great. That's the good news. And it's a mini bye week, so you got a little extra rest.
Yeah, get that extra rest.
Fire him up along with Williams. I think both those guys can be factors. The real dart throw would be a guy like Tesla, but really focus on the main guys for Detroit. They're going to have to score points to keep up with a really good LA Rams team. Matt Stafford, this guy is, in my opinion, the MVP this year. Without him, this team isn't where they are. And again, another week with 3 or more touchdown passes. It feels like Randy every week he does this. And if you have him in fantasy, you have that edge every week at the most important position. Here's an interesting take, and you got to keep an eye on Blake Corum now, because Kyren Williams is the household name that gives you that safety and that comfort. But I'm telling you, Blake Corum is slowly but surely wrestling away the touches, and most importantly,
in the
red zone look. Yeah. So if you have Blake Corum available in some of your fantasy leagues where maybe you play with family and friends that don't really follow this week by week, this could be a guy that could change the course of your playoff future. So I like Blake Corum in this spot. Detroit's defense is susceptible to the run in the red zone. Kyren is a guy that I'm using in my season long, and I've had him all year, and he's been fine, but Blake Corum is coming. Devontae Adams and Puka Nacua, in my opinion, arguably the best 1-2 punch at the wide receiver position. Start them every week. Don't ever overthink it. Look to try to get at least one of those guys in daily, and if you can start Matt Stafford, you're going to have success. I think the Rams win this game. I think the Rams score over 30 points. I think it is without a doubt a game you have to try to get pieces of, even though these players are super expensive in daily.
Yep, I agree. All right, Carolina at New Orleans. It's like the exact opposite. 3:25 on Sunday. The number is 39.5. The Panthers are a slight favorite at 2.5. The Panthers are coming off a bye. They got a gift with the Bucs getting upset by the Saints last week. So now they're both tied for the NFC South at 7-6. So it is a monster game for the Carolina Panthers playing in New Orleans against a sneaky Saints team, which seems to find ways to keep games close. The only player I like for fantasy purposes for Carolina is McMillan. You could think of Dowdle again against the Saints team. Likely he'll get some opportunities. But I think McMillan has proven that he's going to get the volume. And that, to me, as I look at this game with a number at 39.5, if I'm either going to venture to play a player in this game, that I want to make sure the guy has volume and guaranteed volume. And I think McMillan is that guy. But certainly you can think about Dowdle, and you can definitely think about the Carolina defense in this game as well. On the Saints side, there's really nothing to trust. Devin Neal had a touchdown. He had 19 carries and 70 yards. I actually like him this week as a very cheap running back because I think this game will be close. The Saints defense is not terrible at home. I do actually like the Saints defense in this game. And the reason why is that number. It's 39.5. So Vegas is telling us teams aren't going to score a lot on either side. And so you kind of look for defenses that, that are certainly in daily, that are cheap, that are in games kind of like this. But as far as New Orleans, Olave is there. He seems to be healthier than he was a week ago. There's just not a lot to trust. I'm going to believe Vegas that the number's 39, which, sometimes we've had games like this, Kevin, like early in the year when the Steelers were playing somebody and it was like a 38 number and it was a blowout. It was like a shootout. It was like they scored 60 points between the two of them. I don't see that in this game because they just don't have the offensive players on either side. So for me, McMillan on the Carolina side, I like him. You can certainly look at the Panthers quarterback and stack them, but I just think McMillan is probably the one guy. Dowdle as well. I do like Devin Neal. I do like that cheap running back, especially if I'm building a daily team and I need some sort of a cheap player, whether it's flex or at running back. But this game doesn't offer a lot, certainly not when you've just talked about the Lions and the Rams and a number at 55. So take it for what it is. It's just it's a possible way to find some cheap help on the daily side, but there's really nothing really to love. And if you're relying on Carolina players or Saints players in season long, I'm guessing you're probably not in the playoffs at this point in the year. All right, Tennessee, San Francisco. It's a 3:25 start on Sunday.
Yeah, we can't get fooled again here. So let's just start by saying this. Tennessee had their moment in the sun. We're happy for them. It came out of nowhere against a good team on the defensive side of the ball.
You.
Yeah, great job if you had them. Don't tempt fate twice because Cam Ward will only break your heart. You're not touching the passing game in this spot. I'm not. Pollard is a guy. He had a great game last week. I don't know how in the hell he did go for 25 and 161 with a couple touchdowns against that Cleveland defense. Who'd been
one of them was like a 65-yard touchdown run against them. Crazy.
That defense had been giving up 10 points a game at home all year long against good teams like Green Bay. So I don't know how it happened. It did. If you have to start a Tennessee guy, which I hope you don't, it is Pollard. On the San Fran side, they're rested and they're ready and they need to win. And they're favored by 12.5 points here. So trust the 49ers. Brock Purdy, love the spot for him. McCaffrey, no-brainer, might be the top player in fantasy this week. He's the guy you want. If you've got him in season long, just smile because he will score in this game. I have no doubt in my mind. Might even get you multiple touchdowns. Kittle, stud, start him. No, don't overthink it. Juwan Jennings is the receiver I think you want. Ricky Pearsall is the dart throw. San Francisco 34, Tennessee 7. You only want 49ers in this spot, and I'm not backing down. There's not a lot else to say. This late in the year, they're not going to mess around with this team. They're going to get to a lead, and they're going to ride their studs, and then hopefully in the fourth quarter, they're going to shut this game down because I love that Tennessee scored 31 points last week, but I'll be shocked if they get much more than 10 this week.
All right, let's go to the last game of the 3:00 slate and also of the daily slate for FanDuel. It's Indianapolis at Seattle. We've already touched on the fact that this number has changed dramatically, that the Colts are now a big underdog in this game, 12, 13 points or whatever Kevin said earlier. Certainly on the Colts side, because of the injury to Daniel Jones, Phillip Rivers at 44 years old is expected to get the start in this game in Seattle. It reminds me a little bit of when the Vikings brought on Archie Manning way back in the day, and they sent him to Chicago. And I don't know if you remember this, but he got sacked like 11 times in that football game. I'm not saying that Rivers is going to get sacked 11 times, but the guy is not going to be able to run away from that defense. So I hope they have a lot of quick passing set up for him, because at 44, I just don't trust it. Obviously, if you've got Indianapolis players in season long, especially Jonathan Taylor, I think you got to play him, even though it's a very difficult game for the Colts. But it's such an important game, for both teams. But for Indianapolis, it is a monster game. Even if they don't win, they need to see what they have for the final 3 games. Is Rivers capable of getting them through at least 3 more games after this to have a shot to make the postseason? The worst thing that could happen for them is to finish like 8-9, which would be just awful for them after such a great start to the season. So there's really not a lot to love on the Colts side, and it's a lot of question marks too. There's just a lot of things you cannot trust. If they were playing Tennessee, it'd be different. If they were playing somebody at Vegas, it'd be different. But they're playing Seattle, and it's just at home in Seattle. It's like the worst setup possible. Yeah, for the Colts. On the Seattle side, definitely love their defense this week. I think they're one of the higher priced defenses, and for good reason. Darnold and JSN are back after a great week last week. Seattle should win this game by a big margin, which means that the running backs, Walker and Charbonnet, probably are going to get quite a few touches. And one of those guys, maybe even both, might score this week, just because the game script looks like they will be ahead. But I do love stacking Darnold and JSN. I think they're going to try to get out early, get on top of Indianapolis early, kind of beat them down early. And that, because of all the injuries on the Colts side, it feels like that should be the game plan for Seattle. So just in review, play Seattle, guys. They seem to have they're in the much better situation. And if you have the Colts guys, just cross your fingers that, they might get lucky or two to get something to happen, especially if you got Jonathan Taylor, which I do. And he has propelled me in position to be in quite a few playoff situations for me this year. But I'm so sad that when those playoffs begin, I'm not going to be able to trust him as much as I did early in the season. But anyway, Seattle is a monster favorite against the Colts. Sunday night game, 50 years ago. It's when the Cowboys, the push-off by Pearson. You'll be hearing a lot about that on Sunday Night Football this week as the Vikings take on the Cowboys. And should be, even if the Eagles win their game against Vegas, it's still a very important game for Dallas to try to stay alive in the NFC playoffs.
Yeah, fun game for all of us here in Minnesota, because the Vikings last week come off maybe their most impressive win of the year, even though it was against a downtrodden Washington team. Dallas is a 6.5-point favorite. Over-under is 48, which means that the betting market tells you there's going to be some points in this game. And, J.J. McCarthy, it's a different atmosphere on the road. It's a different type of test. But he did throw for 3 touchdowns last week. And I think multiple touchdowns is on the table here. I really do, in a situation where the Vikings are likely going to be playing from behind. I don't mind J.J. McCarthy if you need to push that guy into your starting lineup, because I think the game script's going to allow for it. And Dallas is a good, not great defense, and they do allow passing yards. The running game's still muddied a little bit with Mason and Jones both getting touches, so you'll have to sift through that. Neither one's a great start, but maybe a dart throw there for you. What do we do? Again, I've been saying this for over a month, Randy. What do we do with Justin Jefferson.
Right.
In the last 6 weeks, he's not in the top 50 in fantasy production at his position. He's an out of this world talent, though, and he's playing on the bright lights of Sunday Night Football. It feels like a get right spot to me against this Dallas secondary that can give up big plays. I look for Jefferson to go over 100 yards for the first time in forever on Sunday night. Addison's a dart throw.
Write that down because I don't
Write it
believe
down.
but,
He's going for over 100. Mark it down. Hawkinson is the guy that's getting the volume right now with JJ. So he's a tight end that could be sneaky in this spot. For Dallas, fire up Dak Prescott. He's phenomenal. He's red hot. Fire up Javonte Williams. Fire up CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens, and their tight end Ferguson. There's not a lot to say. There are 5 great players in this lineup. They play every week. You don't overthink it. If you can get them in your daily lineups, I love it. I love a Dak stack with either Ferguson, Lamb, or Pickens. I think Williams of the big 5 probably has the toughest sledding. Minnesota's run defense can be pretty damn stout, frankly. So I think Dallas will try to do it with the passing game. I think Dallas wins the game. I think Dallas covers, but I think it's going to be competitive. I'm calling for a 31-23 Dallas victory. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. It's the Vikings and Carrie Underwood on Sunday Night Football.
So, all right. So who's your do you have the cojones to put McCarthy in as your captain in a lineup on Sunday night?
No, my cojones aren't quite that large. I'm sorry. I can't.
It would be unique, though. I mean, that would be
unique for sure.
Yeah.
I think even though it's Justin Jefferson and there's some name value there, because he's been so bad for so long, I think he is going to end up being my captain. I would use him as my captain. I would use both McCarthy and Dak, and then I'd try to get as many of those Dallas pass receivers. I'm going to avoid the running game here and hope that it's a passing type of game. It feels like it's going to be.
All right, let's move on to the last game. It's a Monday night game. Miami's at Pittsburgh. This game is 43.5. The Steelers are around 3-point favorites. Obviously, it's a big win. It's a big game for Pittsburgh because they now lead that division in the AFC over Baltimore by a game. Rodgers had 284 yards passing last week. No interceptions. Metcalf had 12 targets. That's a big deal for Pittsburgh because they need to get Metcalf back into it. He had 7 catches, 148 yards. The Steelers' run game is so interesting because we talk about Warren all the time, but Gainwell just keeps getting opportunities. He had a touchdown. He had 10 touches. He had 6 catches. He's kind of like the catch-all player for Pittsburgh. And I do have him in a couple of my lineups, and I do start him because he's just sneaky enough. Well, he gets you about 10 fantasy points a week, and you don't expect that, but that's what you're getting. I do love the Steelers' defense, I think, this week against Miami. If you have them in season long, I think it's a good place for them. On the Dolphins side, you have to monitor the Achane rib injury and kind of see where that puts them. He had 92 yards and a touchdown before he left the football game, which opened the door for Jalen Wright, who had a monster game out of nowhere, 24 carries and 107 yards and a touchdown. If both backs are playing, I still think Achane is by far the one that you want. I don't know how many people will jump on a waiver wire this late in the year to pick up Wright, but I suppose if Achane's injury is going to mean that he's going to sit a game or two, maybe Wright is worth it, or maybe he's worth picking up this week. I'm not going to do that, but maybe he is. Waddle caught a touchdown pass last week. Certainly, you can look at Tua and Waddle and all that kind of stuff. But for me, Achane is the guy if he's healthy and he's playing. I don't really trust a lot other players on Miami, even though they're playing much better than they were earlier in the year. I just think this is it's a December game in Pittsburgh with so much on the line. There's such great history between Miami and Pittsburgh in the AFC. It just feels like a great Monday night football game. And I'm glad it's a Monday night game and not part of the daily main slate because there's not a lot to choose from, but there's some interesting pieces. If I was going to pick a captain in this game, I think I'd pick Metcalf to be that captain because I think the Steelers now are going to really involve him a lot more. They need to involve him a lot more. And Rodgers is healthy. Here we are, week 15? And Aaron Rodgers is still playing, which is amazing. So there's a lot to love in this football game if it's on the one-game slate, because there's some interesting pieces back and forth. We get a chance now to announce our Vikings ticket winner from the last 4 weeks of passing out code words to everybody. And our congratulations to Eric Hall. He is our winner of Vikings game tickets against the Lions on Christmas Day. So, Eric, thanks so much for watching and listening to our podcast. And congratulations. And obviously, we will be in touch with you to get you those tickets, the pair of tickets for the Vikings and Lions on Christmas Day at US Bank Stadium. Yeah, you bet. All right, let's move on to our PPR lineups for this week. And I'll start. Joe Burrow is my quarterback this week. I love that rematch against the Baltimore Ravens on that happened on Thanksgiving Day that Kevin talked about. He had 4 touchdown passes in that game. He's a monster choice. My running backs are ETN and McCaffrey. I love both these guys this week. I think they're in great spots. JSN is one of my receivers. I do like Nico Collins in the other matchup against Arizona this week. My tight end is Fannin out of Cleveland against the Bears. Shedeur Sanders likes this guy. He throws to him a lot. He's getting volume. And I think that Cleveland, if they're going to have a chance, they're going to be in chase mode, as Kevin puts it. I think that they're going to need to throw the football. So I like the fact that he might get some volume. And my flex guy is Jamar Chase, because if Higgins is hurt, and it looks like he is, even though I'll talk about him a little bit later in my daily lineup, I think that you've got to have pieces of that Cincinnati-Baltimore game. And I really like the Cincinnati side of that game a little bit more than I do Baltimore. So my PPR is Burrow, ETN, McCaffrey, JSN, Collins, Fannin at tight end, and Jamar Chase as my flex.
Yeah, we'll have some similarities. My best PPR lineup starts with Josh Allen. Unbelievable performance last week. You can punch him every week. He's likely going to be one of the highest scoring players in any position. Miami's put themselves in a position where if they win out, they're likely going to get in. And this team has a tough schedule, but they have one superstar player right now, and his name is Devon Achane. And so they're going to march him out there. I know he's listed as questionable. When push comes to shove, I think he plays. I think he's going to get a ton of usage. I think last week, with the way the game was going, they were able to play the backup, and he did great. But this is the guy they want if they're going to make a push to the playoffs. He's in my best PPR lineup. Along with you, Christian McCaffrey, not a lot to say. He's rested. Late in the year, he's healthy, catches the ball, runs the ball, scores touchdowns every week. My receivers are Puka Nacua and George Pickens. Both these guys are high-volume guys. Both these guys are dependable guys, and both these guys have quarterbacks in Dak Prescott and obviously Matthew Stafford that are just elite. My tight end is the best tight end in football. That's Trey McBride, and my flex player is Bijan Robinson. So I've got some star power there. I try to use players that maybe aren't in the main slate, because we're going to get to some strong opinions now with our FanDuel lineups. And I'm going to tell you, of all the weeks we've done this, I love my lineup this week. I don't usually do this, Randy, but I'm like copying it and playing like 7 different contests with it. I am so excited about my lineup.
Okay.
Which means I'm going to lose.
Let's move on to our FanDuel lineups using FanDuel pricing for this week. And I'll start. Quarterback position, I'm going with Burrow, as I talked about before. He's at $8,400. One of my running backs is ETN from Jacksonville at $7,500, which means I need a cheap running back, because I'm going with, and I put a asterisk by this. I have T. Higgins in there right now as my receiver at $7,700. He's in concussion protocol. His chances of playing probably aren't good, but if he does play, I love stacking him with Burrow. Chase is just too expensive for the lineup that I want to put together. I'm trying to find a little bit more balance in my lineup. So I have Higgins there. I'll get back to my other running back in a second. My other receivers are Adams for the Rams, because I want a piece of that football game at $8,000. And Jamison Williams from Detroit. His price has dropped back down to 6,300 in a game that, of course, the Lions are playing the Rams, so I want a piece of that. My tight end is Strange for Jacksonville. Probably not the best choice, but I think Jacksonville is going to throw the football early in that game to get up. He's only 5,500. So that's kind of one of my cheap routes. Zay Flowers is my flex. He's at 7,300. Again, I want a piece of that Baltimore-Cincinnati game, and I want a bring back piece because I have Burrow and Higgins there, at least for right now. My cheap running back is Neal out of New Orleans.
Yeah.
He's at $6,100. I think it's a chance where he could get a touchdown, maybe even two, against Carolina this week. I think the Saints are going to be fired up to play spoiler. And so I'm looking for him. And I do love the New Orleans defense. And they're the cheapest one on the slate at 3,200. And again, when you've got a game that's the total numbers at 39, both defenses are figured to be in good positions this week. So here's my FanDuel lineup for this week. Joe Burrow at quarterback, ETN at running back, Devin Neal running back, Higgins for now at receiver until I have to change him out, Devontae Adams, Jamison Williams. Strange is my tight end from Jacksonville, getting a piece of that game. Zay Flowers is my flex, hoping that Lamar will find him a few times in that game against the Bengals, and New Orleans is my defense. Kevin?
Love it. All right. I wanted a part of that Detroit game in a big way, so I am going to start with Matthew Stafford at 8,300, my quarterback, who I adore, and link him up with his go-to guy in the red zone, Devontae Adams, who is $8,000. That's how my lineup started. To get there, I had to find somebody really cheap that might have a week where they step up a notch. Jade Reed was out for over 2 months, came back for Green Bay last week. Didn't see a ton of usage, but enough to get a handful of targets. Now we're second time back off the injury in a game where they're going to have to score some points. I don't love him, but Jade Reed at 5,900 is a super cheap option at receiver. It allows me to have some big names here as we'll get to the rest of my lineup. My other receiver is Cortland Sutton, who's a target machine for Denver, 6,100. And now we get to the good stuff. Woody Marks is the guy that's going to make or break my week in daily fantasy. He's 6,500. He's getting a ton of usage. He will score for the Houston Texans. I, like Randy, adore Travis Etienne this week against the Jets. He's only 7,500. So I've got Woody Marks and Etienne in my backfield.
Yep.
My tight end is Hunter Henry in a game that's supposed to be in the 50s as far as total points. Hunter Henry's a go-to guy in the red zone for New England. My flex is Christian McCaffrey. To me, the most valuable player in daily this week. McCaffrey's 9,000 against a Tennessee defense that I think is ripe to get picked by San Francisco. My defense is the New York Giants against a backup quarterback in what could be some weather in New York at 3,300. So Stafford, 8,300. Woody Marks, 6,500. ETN, 7,500. Devontae Adams, 8,000. Jade Reed, 5,900. Sutton, 6,100. Henry, 5,400. McCaffrey, the big dog, at 9,000. Giants defense at 3,300. I'm getting my garage door fixed this morning, and I am planning on that lineup paying for the entire thing. So thank God for fantasy football.
Oh, that's awesome. All right. Well, thanks to everybody for watching this edition of Fantasy Huddle. Our thanks to Aquarius Home Services, 10K Construction, Minnesota Masonic Charities, and Lexus of Maplewood and Wayzata. And congratulations again to Eric Hall. You're going to the Vikings game against Detroit on Christmas Day. Kev, good to see you. We'll talk again next week.